Stand at any harbor long enough, and you'll notice something odd repeating on ship after ship. Cargo vessels, cruise liners, fishing boats, different owners, different countries, different decades of construction. Yet almost every single one carries the same detail. A sharp red stripe running along the bottom of the hull, right where the metal disappears into the water. It's too consistent to be a coincidence and too widespread to be a design trend. Somebody, somewhere, decided this color mattered enough to repeat across an entire industry. Hit subscribe and let's find out what that red line is actually hiding. To understand the red, you first have to understand what ships were fighting before paint could even help. Centuries ago, every vessel that touched the ocean became a target. Within weeks, algae would coat the hull, barnacles would cement themselves onto the surface, and a small, worm-like creature would tunnel directly into the wood, hollowing it out from the inside. This buildup had a name, biofouling, and it wasn't cosmetic. A fouled hull created drag, slowed the ship down, and in some cases doubled fuel and effort needed just to keep moving. For a merchant racing to market, or a navy racing into battle, a slow ship wasn't an inconvenience. It was a liability that could sink an entire voyage before the enemy ever got close. Shipbuilders needed something the ocean itself couldn't undo. The first real breakthrough came from an unlikely material, copper. Shipwrights began covering wooden hulls in thin copper sheeting, and almost immediately, something changed. Copper reacts with seawater in a way that's mildly toxic to the organisms trying to attach themselves. Barnacles couldn't grip, worms couldn't burrow, the hull stayed clean, and the ship stayed fast. But that fix had an expiration date. Once shipbuilders moved from wood to iron and steel, bolting copper directly onto a metal hull created a new disaster. Saltwater turned the pairing into something close to a battery, and the resulting electrochemical reaction ate through the iron even faster than the barnacles ever had. So engineers didn't abandon copper. They changed its form. Instead of sheets, they blended copper compounds directly into paint. And that compound, copper oxide, happened to be a deep, rust-toned red. The color wasn't selected from a palette. It was simply what the working chemistry looked like once it dried. Here's where it gets interesting, because modern anti-fouling paint no longer needs to be red at all. Chemists today can formulate protective coatings in almost any color imaginable, using compounds far more advanced than 19th century copper oxide. And yet the red line never disappeared. Tradition plays a role. Sailors have always been protective of maritime customs. But there's a second reason that has nothing to do with sentiment. That stark red against black or red against white contrast creates an unmistakable horizon line along the hull. Crews use it to instantly judge how deep the ship is sitting in the water, which matters enormously when checking load levels against the draft markings painted on the side. A ship riding too low is a ship in danger of taking on water. The red line makes that risk visible from a distance, in seconds, without instruments. What began as pest control quietly became a safety tool. The detail most people miss is that nobody actually set out to invent a ship color. 19th century engineers were simply solving a corrosion problem, and copper oxide happened to be the most effective compound available at the time. As the paint spread from shipyard to shipyard, red wasn't chosen, it was inherited. Later, when synthetic alternatives arrived and color finally became optional, the maritime world had already spent over a century associating that red line with a properly maintained seaworthy vessel. Changing it would have meant abandoning a signal every sailor and harbor worker already trusted on site, a byproduct of chemistry turned into a permanent visual language of the sea. So the next time you see that red stripe resting just above the waterline, you're not looking at decoration. You're looking at the visible residue of a centuries-long fight against barnacles and rot, repurposed into a tool crews still rely on today to judge depth, weight, and safety at a glance. A detail this small was never really small at all. If this changed the way you'll look at the next ship you pass, hit like and subscribe. There's a hidden reason behind almost everything around you, And we're only just getting started.